Hey guys, so we're here in Halahala Rizal and we're actually here trying to scout for new locations for basic landscape photography workshops. And perhaps let me tell you why I think this is a really good location. At the same time, let me tell you and let's talk about basically one of the most asked questions to me when it comes to filters, which is which filter should I get first? Okay, so this location is basically the banks of the Lake of Laguna or Laguna de Bay. And as you can see, there is a bit of movement in the water, but it's not entirely rugged such as what you would get from a seascape in Baler or Dingalan or anywhere else with a beach. This is relatively still waters, so it's not much of a high pressure location, which is why I think it's really a good place for beginner landscape photographers to try and master how they deal with motion and how they deal with water in general. And what I love about this place is actually, of course, we have the sun about to set right here, and there are a few foreground elements right now, but we expect a bit more foreground elements in the coming weeks. Now, this area actually has so much life to it. There's a whole community surrounding it. As you can see, there are also a lot of fishing boats around me. And it's also a good place to try some travel photography. But for landscape photography, the mere fact that you have relatively still waters plus some foreground elements, this is going to be a good practice spot for anyone who's just starting out. The common question for workshops that I would always get is if I should get one filter or two filters, which ones should I get? And here's my answer. The first one you should always get, especially for a location like this, is a 10-stop ND filter. Now, a 10-stop ND filter, as I always say, will chop down the amount of light by half 10 times. It's actually decreasing the amount of light to 1/1028. And because of that, you get a lot of reduction in terms of exposure time and you get to extend your exposure time by a lot. Of course, it would be good if you have other ND filters, maybe a 3-stop or a 6-stop, just to play around when there is less light. But having a 10-stop, especially when you start shooting at a time like this, will give you more than enough time to be able to smoothen the still waters and to be able to do long exposures. Always remember that when you're doing long exposures, your primary consideration is what is moving and why would I want motion blur on it. And in this one, of course, what's moving is the water. It's being blown by the wind, and you want to take out the ripples that will be causing a distraction in the surface of the water. You want to somehow make it minimal. You somehow want to make it smooth and flat so that it's actually very nice to look at. Now, of course, there are many options for ND filters. Again, I said there's a 6-stop, there's a 10-stop, there's a 3-stop, and even a 15-stop. And later on, when you get to master the use of filters, it would be better because you would know which ones you would actually choose to use. Because at the end of the day, your decision making should be based on your artistic intent and what you want to achieve. But again, a first filter to have that's good is a 10-stop ND filter because that is going to let you do 30 seconds on a water surface like this, and that would be more than enough. Now, the added bonus of these filters that I'm using from H&Y is that this 10-stop is actually already a combination filter with a CPL. The CPL filter is the one that controls the glare, controls the reflections, and having it there is always very handy because all you have to do is rotate it. Even if you don't need a CPL, you can just rotate it the other way so that the effect is not there and you can just have it there with you. And of course, the biggest benefit of that is I'm using the H&Y Revo Ring Swift system, so it's actually just a drop-in filter that you insert and you slap on to the front, which is a Revo Ring adapter. Now, that's already 2 filters down. We have the 10-stop and the CPL. The 10-stop for the long exposure, the CPL for, of course, the reflections, the colors, and the glare. And the third one is, of course, a GND. Now, there are also many GND variants. There's a soft GND and hard GND. And if you're just gonna have one, you should get a soft GND simply because it's more universal. When you have a hard GND and there is something crossing your horizon, basically it's gonna leave a mark and it's gonna be obvious that you're using a GND. Of course, the goal of using a GND is to balance out the luminosity between your foreground and the sky with, of course, the basic knowledge that the sky during daytime is always brighter than your foreground. Now with HNY, there's actually another GND variant, which is the Balancer GND 1.2. It's also a soft grad, but it is darker on the top part with a 1.2, but the graduation towards the clear part is much more subtle. So this is actually another really universal kind of GND that you'll be using. So in total, you have a 10-stop ND filter. With HNY, you also already have a CPL on it, and you slap on your magnetic GND just like this. So this setup is actually made up of just 2 filter pieces with an adapter. And if you're really serious about landscape photography, you can skip getting the circular screw-in filters and get a square format because at the end of the day, it's really much more modular and much more flexible. So for this shot, the goal is simply to get close to the foreground because I want to minimize the amount of negative space that there will be between my camera, the foreground element, and of course the mountain and the sunset in the back. So I have to go really low with angles right here. So I'm using the Benro Rhino. It's carbon fiber, so I'm not really worried about corrosion. And basically I'm here and I'm gonna wait here until the sun begins to dip behind the mountains, and that's gonna give me a really, hopefully a really nice sun ray. For this shot, I really love this location because I'm using a 24-105 and I am just at 70 millimeters. So definitely this location will be perfect for beginner landscape photographers who are using kit lenses. And that's basically the goal. We wanted to find a place wherein they can go and practice and not be limited by the basic gear that they might have. Of course, if they have more gear, then they're gonna have a lot more to work with. But if they have a kit lens and an entry-level camera, it's more than enough, and all they would need to have are filters. So right now, I'm doing 30 seconds at f16, simply because I'm also waiting for the sun rays, and I'm doing ISO 100 because I can. And the 10-stop ND filter is doing more than enough to slow down the exposure for that, because again, there is motion in the water, but not really too much that I would need to shoot longer. So with this combination, basically the 10-stop is allowing me to do the 30-second exposures and allow me to be able to also do an f16 aperture, because if I had a darker ND filter, then I can't go that small. And of course, the CPL is actually also doing some work by controlling the amount of reflections in the water so that it's not actually overpowering the exposure. And lastly, the GND is doing some work by balancing the brightness of the sky with my foreground. And in this situation, of course, it's not really that far at this point. And there we go. If you have any questions, do leave them down below in the comment section. I'm going to be shooting because the sun is right about to set. And yeah, if you have any questions, down in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, click that button, and I'll see you on the next video.